being, Allah the first, Allah the last, the one and only, who has created man and nothing has created him. He has been existing without any period of termination. And he will continue to live even when all other human beings have ceased to exist. I bear witness that there is no deity worthy of worship except Allah. And I bear witness that the Holy Prophet Muhammad, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, is the messenger of Allah, the one chosen by Allah to lead us from darkness into light. I therefore crave the indulgence of Almighty Allah to continue to shower his blessings upon the noble Prophet Muhammad, upon his household, his family members, his Sahaba, and the entire Muslims all over the world. To my distinguished Muslim brothers and sisters in Islam, who are hearing or seeing me from whichever part of the world, I say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This topic, looking about the aspects of amenities, is it, and for which, and I feel challenged that this period last year,
please pardon us, our presenter is having a bit of a network issue. Let's give him a minute while his network comes back on. The topic for today is Islam as amelioration for human condition. Has he already started talking already? Let's give him some time to do justice to the topic for us today. While we wait for our main presenter, let's call on Imam Alagmuju, Imam Uthman and Imam Shaun, our backup guest speaker. Bismillah, Imam Uthman. If you can please go ahead with the topic while we wait for our main presenter for the day. Imam Uthman.
Yes. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.
Prof is back.
Okay, Prof is back. Alhamdulillah. Bismillah, Prof, you're muted.
we had similar programs for which Muslims all over the world benefited. Today, I have the humble opportunity of sharing my experience with my Muslim brothers and sisters all over the world. And to you all, I say, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. And once again, I also say, Ramadan Kareem. This topic has brought to the fore the mercy which Islam has come to be, not only for the Muslims, but indeed for the entire human race. Islam is not just a religion. It is a complete code of life, the one that Almighty Allah himself has chosen without any interference from any human being. He said this in Surah Al-Ma'idah. بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم إسلام دينا. Allah says, today I have perfected for you your religion, and I've chosen for you Islam as a religion. The perfection of the blessings, the mercy of Allah, as well as his decision to name the religion Islam, was Allah's choice. Therefore, you will come to realize that the message and the essence of Islam is to ameliorate man from the shackles of difficulties, from the shackles of oppression, from the shackles of inequalities which man has been going through before the advent of Islam. Distinguished brothers and sisters in Islam, you will recall that in the days of the Jahiliyyah, before the mission of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Muslims who came later were able to realize that human beings have been living in total darkness, where might is right, where there is no dignity for life, where people do things the way they think they should. The Arabian Peninsula at this time was in total darkness. Armed robbery, alcoholism, sexual promiscuity, and all forms of vices were the order of the day. During this time, there is no sanctity of human life. Might was right. It was at this period of Jahiliyyah period that Almighty Allah sent Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to go and rescue man from these shackles, from the lowest ebb of immorality, from the highest level of criminality. And at this time, Allah chose Islam for us as a religion. That religion, therefore, is meant to ameliorate the entire gamut of human life, the social life, the economic life, the spiritual life, the matrimonial life, and all the strata of our life. Islam has come to ameliorate it for us. And this is why, in approaching this topic, I want to call attention to the fact that Islam itself is a blessing. Al-Islam huwa rahma lil alamin. It is a blessing to the entire human race, the one that Allah has deliberately chosen to guide us from the path of wrongdoings to the path of righteousness. Therefore, when we look at Islam, we realize that every aspect of human life is taken care of. Beginning with the 5 pillars of Islam. Iman, which is the first pillar of Islam, is there to assist man, to ensure that man attains a level of spirituality by believing in Allah, Allah, the creator of every other creatures. Therefore, it puts the mind at rest, because with the Iman properly seated in the heart of somebody, he or she fears nothing. In fact, nothing threatens him or her, because he fears Allah and Allah alone. And that was why, even when the Muslims were fewer in number and the unbelievers of Makkah were larger in number, the Muslims were a formidable team, and they were able to stand, they were able to weather the storm because of their faith in Allah. Amantu billahi wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi wa rasulihi la nufarriqu bayna ahadin min rasulihi wa qalu sami'na wa ata'na ghufranaka rabbana wa ilaykal masir. Iman is a very strong instrument, the one that could lead man to eternity, the one that could ameliorate in man's heart every other kind of difficulty. In other words, whoever attains Iman is somebody that will have at the back of his or her mind succor and tranquility. He will also have, in addition, peace, bliss, as well as ease of life. We move on to the second pillar of Islam, as Salat, the 5 canonical prayers. This is another amelioration of man's life. Indeed, scientists have come to inform us that that prayer, that our regular 5 daily prayers, serves many physical assistance for us. It helps us physically. Let's talk about the physical structure of Salat. Each time we engage in the 5 pillars of Islam and we observe the rakats, we engage in some kind of kinetics, and this helps our body to remain firm and active. The spirituality aspect of our prayer, it produces spiritual energy that may yield many psychological beliefs, such as amelioration of stress and improvement in subjective well-being, interpersonal sensitivity, and mastery. As Salat, the Islamic prayers can also be integrated into mainstream therapeutic interventions with religious Muslim clients, and this integration can mobilize, it can transform, it can invigorate the process of psychotherapy. This is to tell us that our 5 daily prayers, apart from the spiritual benefits, it also ameliorates our life in the entirety. Now we look at zakat, the 3rd pillar of Islam. This is in itself an amelioration of the economic activities of every human being. One simple definition we can give to zakat in Islam is that it is a closing gap between the rich and the poor. And whoever pays the zakat, the Quran has said it, Qad aflaha man zakkaha. Whoever has engaged in zakat has purified his or her own wealth. Therefore, the purification of our wealth is through the zakat. It ameliorates whatever we have been able to amass. And the time we give out the zakat, we are happy. And like the Quran said, Qad aflaha man zakkaha. Whoever has paid it has purified himself or herself. We go on to look at zakat as that instrument of assisting the less privileged members of the society. The wealth you are having with you is not yours alone. The excess on it is to be given out to others. And that is why Quran chapter 9, verse 60 explains to us that we want to look at 8 different categories of people to benefit from zakat. And this is contained in Quran chapter 9, verse 60. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إنما صدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها وفي رقاب, and so إلى آخر آية. Those 8 categories, my brothers and sisters, by the time we study each of the categories of the beneficiaries of zakat stipulated in the glorious Quran, you realize that it is aimed at ameliorating the lives of others. Talk of Ibn Sabil, for instance, those who are lost and those who could not find their way. Somebody is traveling and on transit, the person loses her money or loses her particulars. We use the zakat money to assist such a person. Wa fi sabilillah, on the part of Allah, We also use zakat money to assist those who are genuinely indebted. Genuinely indebted. We use the zakat for the poor people, the downtrodden masses, those who are needy, and so on and so forth. What I'm saying here is that the 8 categories stipulated by Islam as beneficiaries of zakat is to close the gap between the rich and the poor and to ensure that all of us live happily and that we enjoy a minimal comfort in life. What a religion. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. I quickly want to move on to the 4th pillar of Islam, talking about Ramadan, the one that I'm sure this platform has given the opportunity for us to talk more and more about the benefits of Ramadan. In fact, our medical doctors have told us that for you to enjoy life, you need to reduce the volume of food intake. And that is what Ramadan has come to teach us. When we are fasting, we allow our body to function effectively and efficiently, among several other medical lessons and benefits of Ramadan. You will come to realize that in the month of Ramadan, whoever engages in it, imanan, with the belief in Allah, waqtisaban, and with righteousness, with steadfastness, such a person will have at the back of his or her mind a kind of spiritual joy. He will have at the back of his mind a joy that I have strived myself, not for human beings, but for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm sure the benefits of Ramadan are there. And you come to realize that it's one way which Allah has used to ameliorate, one, our physical, our spiritual, our economic, our matrimonial, and every aspect of our life. Don't forget that the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us that as soon as Ramadan comes, Allah commands 3 things. The first is the closure of all the gates of hellfire. Second is the opening of all the gates of paradise. And the third commandment is that Allah will ask the angels of Allah to chain shaitan and all the agents of shaitan, the shayateen. It means, therefore, that as soon as Ramadan comes in place, the gate of paradise is open for us. The gate of hell is closed for that period. Then Allah makes sure that the shaitan and all the children of shaitan are locked. They are kept under check. That is to ameliorate our life and to assist us in moving to spiritual development, a spiritual height in life. Now, finally, the 5th pillar of Islam, which is Hajj, is another way by which Allah has put in place an amelioration strategy for Muslims and indeed the entire human race. How come that we all, during the Hajj, we stay in the same venue, we wear the same dress, we chant the same talbiyah, labaik Allahumma labaik, labaik la sharika laka labaik, innal hamda wan ni'mata laka wal mulk la sharika lak. We chant the same thing. We stay in the same place at the same time. We perform a collective responsibility. There is no individualism in Hajj. What you have in Hajj is a collective activity. We move at the same time. We stop at the same time. We run, we juggle between Safa and Marwa at the same time. We try as much as possible to keep ourselves within the spiritual realm of Allah, within the period of Hajj. And the Quran says, Al-Hajju ashhuru ma'lumatin. Faman farada fihinna al-hajja wala rafatha wala fusuqo وَلَا جِدَالَ فِي الْحَجِّ. The period of Hajj is a known month, a month that we have to avoid three things. We should avoid vain talks. We should avoid unnecessary polemics, disagreements. We should avoid all acts of impunity, because we are all doing the same thing at the same time, at the same place, for the same Almighty Allah. And on the day of Arafat, Allah himself says he will be pleased with all the pilgrims, all on Ihram, standing on the Mount Arafat and saying the same statement, the Talbiyah. The essence of Hajj, therefore, my brothers and sisters in Islam, is to move us to a spiritual height, to graduate us from one level of spirituality to a highest level of spirituality, and more importantly, to get us closer to Almighty Allah. Whoever has performed the Hajj and is able to do it in the right direction will come back home and will be having the status of a day-old child, a newborn baby who has committed no sin, who has not done anything wrong to Almighty Allah. That is the status. My brothers and sisters in Islam, the 5 pillars of Islam we have examined is to tell us that Allah has a purpose for giving us Islam. And the essence of giving us Islam is to ameliorate our life, our thinking, our visibility, our disposition, as well as how best to live a life of Islam as one of the strongest link to reach Almighty Allah. We look at another very important aspect of human life. Let us look at the issue of slavery, for instance. Human beings, time there was when those who have power will just capture those who are powerless and put them under slavery. And they will be subservient to them, and they will use them the way they like, and they will kill them at will, and they will continue to use them like any other instrument. But Islam has told us that Islam respects human sanctity. Slavery or quasi-slavery has no place as far as Islam is concerned. The Quran, which is the word of Allah, which was sent through Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, makes numerous references to slaves and slavery, such as Quran chapter 2, verse 178, Quran chapter 16, verse 75, Quran chapter 30, verse 28. And the essence of this is to teach us, to tell us that human beings, we are one and the same, and that we should remain the way we were from Almighty Allah. Even as Muslims, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنِينَ إِخْوَةٌ. You Muslims are brothers to each other, and there should not be any degradation of one person to the other. The Quran suggests certain means of integrating slaves, some of who are enslaved after being captured in the war, into the Muslim community. Islam allows slaves to marry, either slaves or free persons. The Quran chapter 24, verse 32, and Quran chapter 2, verse 221, as well as Quran chapter 4, verse 25, all prohibits ownership from prostituting unwilling female slaves. And you can imagine Quran chapter 24, verse 3 also mentioned this. Despite this protection against one form of sexual exploitation, female slaves do not have the right to grant or deny sexual access to themselves. Instead, The Quran permits men to have sexual access to what their right hands possesses, meaning female captives or slaves, as contained in Quran chapter 23, verse 5 to 6, and Quran chapter 70, verse 29 to 30. This was widely accepted and practiced by early among Muslims. The Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for example, kept a slave concubine, Maria the Copt, who was given to him as a gift by the Roman governor of Alexandria. He was a slave concubine to the particular king. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam converted her and retained her and make sure he gave her all the due respect and rights as a Muslim woman. Traditional Islamic teachings elaborate significantly on the Quranic material concerning slavery. The enslavement of war captives is regulated, for example, along with the purchase and sale of slaves. What is not permissible to enslave is to enslave other Muslims. The justs and the jurists clarify that if a non-Muslim converts to Islam after enslavement, he or she remains a slave and may be lawfully purchased and sold like any other slave. This rule closes a potential loophole, allowing for slaves to gain their freedom by simple fact of conversion. The law also prescribes penalty for slave owners who maltreat or abuse their slaves. These penalties can include forced manumission of the slave without compensation to the owner. Islamic law devotes special attention to regulating the practice of slave marriage and concubinage in order to determine the paternity and or ownership of children born to a female slave. A man cannot simultaneously own and be married to the same female slave. The male owner of a female slave can either marry her off to a different man, thus renouncing his own sexual access to her, or he may take her as his own wife, using her sexuality himself. Both situations have specific effect on the status of any children she bears. When female slaves are married off, any children born from the marriage are slaves belonging to the mother's owner, though legal paternity is established for her husband. When the master takes his or her own female slave as a wife, by contrast, any children she bears are free, and legally the children are her own, with the same status of any children born in a legal marriage to a free wife. The slave who bears her master's child become an ummul walad. Ummul walad, that is literally mother of the child, gaining certain protections. Most importantly, she cannot be sold, and she's automatically freed upon her master's death. Distinguished brothers and sisters in Islam, how have these laws played out in Muslim history? Slavery was a social fact in most of the Muslim world for nearly 1400 years, like I've mentioned earlier, with a large number of slaves employed in domestic service as well as commerce. Large-scale agricultural slavery, like the plantation slavery in the US and other countries, was seldom practiced in the Muslim world. This was not due to any prohibition against such forms of slave labor, but rather to economic and geographical factors. This does not mean that Islamic slavery was not harsh, as some apologists have argued, or that masters were not sometimes brutal to their slaves. However, slavery did not always equal low social status, and in the medieval Egypt, for instance, the Mamluk, that is the owner dynasty, and those who are actually in authority with them, manumitted military slaves rising to govern others. The conscript slaves took to themselves the Ottoman as well as other royal riders who were able to make sure that they do not only infringe on their rights, they also take their rights by will. But with the coming of Islam and with the explanation of the teachings of Islam, such practices were abolished, thereby ameliorating the lives of this common man, the voice for the voiceless, and the representative of the downtrodden masses. Islam, therefore, provides that in every culture, there must be respect for one another. There must be the due respect as well as giving each other what we deserve as a kind of honor among ourselves. We should take note of the fact that Islam as a religion has provided for us every opportunity to develop to any level, either a male or a female. We now talk about woman emancipation. Before the coming of Islam, women were seen as mere instruments. Women were seen as mere materials to be used and even to be inherited. But with the coming of Islam, Almighty Allah provided for women their due rights, equal opportunities, the one that should provide for them the need to fully develop their potentials and to also be heard. We recall that Aisha, the wife of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in spite of her deep knowledge of Islam, in spite of her erudition, she was able to teach and to lead others. And she was a teacher. She was a role model. She was a pathfinder. Despite her young age, Aisha was able to impact the life of the elderly ones. This is the message of Islam, that age or sex does not discourage or put any person at a disadvantage. Rather, we have every opportunity to develop ourselves, either male or female. And this was why Islam also provided that in the dispensation of spirituality, the women who fast, the women who fear Allah, the men who fear Allah, the men who fast, and Islam categorized all of them that Allah will reward them equally because there is no segregation as far as Islam is concerned in the matter of spiritual development between the male and female. Furthermore, let us look at another very important aspect of our life, looking at the economic life of Muslims. Islam allows us to engage in halal business and to avoid haram, riba. The essence of this is for us to be able to have at the back of our mind and our life pattern what will actually benefit us in this world and in the hereafter. Today, it has come to the knowledge of even the Western Orientalists that the position of Islam on economic activities is humane, and it is more of activities that will bring human development rather than the others that we are used to. Talk about the capitalists, talk about the communists, and all other ideologies. The Islamic ideology provides for us equal opportunity to do business and to have gains and profits within the margin without hurting the other person. Brothers and sisters in Islam, the longest verse in the Quran talks about agreement between two people. This agreement should be the one that we write down. and whose terms and conditions must be spelled out clearly. The essence of this is to allow nobody to cheat another person. Even if the other person is unlettered, if the other person is an illiterate, Islam provides that you should allow the person to understand the content of the agreement, read it out to him or her, interpret it to him or her, explain the conditions to him or her, and these are spelled out in the Quran. It means, therefore, that Islam is against cheating. Islam is against trying to capitalize on another person's weakness in order to gain from that particular person. So agricultural, economic, as well as all other activities are permitted to Muslims as long as it is out to assist and to help us to have viable economic activities. Let us talk briefly about the Sharia itself and how Sharia has come to be the one that has come to ameliorate the life of Muslims. The divine message of the Sharia is to a large extent a tool for Muslims and the one that assists Muslims to appreciate themselves better because it provides dignity for us. The Quran has said it. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ومن لم يحكم بما أنزل الله فأولئك, or whoever is adjudicating without the Sharia, without the law of Almighty Allah, such people are unbelievers. They are those who have strayed, and they are those people who can be regarded as munafiqun. We look at the Sharia that has the human face, the human feelings. Unlike the other laws, the man-made laws that is out to exploit, the man-made laws that is out to cheat, the man-made laws that is out to give as much as possible to one person as against the other person. The Sharia provides a balanced adjudication, and that is why it is to ameliorate all our activities. It is an international code, the one that cut across all races, all colors, all languages, and the entire continent of the world. It is quite known that man-made laws vary with respect to locality, ethnicity, and tribe. What might be considered appropriate and normal in selected regions might be regarded in others as taboo and unconventional. Hence, every nation recognizes the difference and peculiarities in the legal system of other nations. Sharia took exception to the aforementioned manifestation as its limits transcends local, tribal, and ethnic boundary. It unifies its adherents across the globe, irrespective of their geographical affiliation. The Quran described the internationalism of the law of Islam by saying in Quran chapter 21, verse 107, "And we have not sent you, O Muhammad, except as a mercy to the whole world. Wama arsalinaka illa rahmatan lil alamin." Conclusion. I want to conclude by calling on all Muslims all over the world that in order for us to appreciate the amelioration status of our religion, we should hold on to the Quran and to the Quran. Ones, the Quran, and let them know the meaning of what they are reading, and let them know the message of the Quran. Thirdly, the hadith of the Prophet should be our culture. We should cultivate it in our homes, in our environment, and ensure that every day we pick one sunnah of the Prophet and drop one bid'ah, because every sunnah of the Prophet leads us to more righteousness. Finally, my brothers and sisters in Islam, I want to appreciate NASFAT as a body that has been able to educate Muslims all over the world. This organization requires the prayers of Muslims all over the world. And we continue to pray for the organization to continue to work stronger and stronger so that it will continue to educate the Muslims and enlighten the Muslims to move on the Sirat al-Mustaqim. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم وسبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. We say a big Jazakallah Khairan to our Prof. Latif Oladimeji, for that wonderful presentation. I mentioned earlier before we started with his Islamic studies background up until now as the Dean of Faculty in ICMA University. He is going to share a wealth of Islamic knowledge on this topic with us. For those who joined us late, the topic was Islam and amelioration of human condition. Islam and amelioration of human condition. Jazakallah khairan, Prof. May Allah continue to increase you in knowledge. May Allah continue to increase you in iman and wisdom to continue to champion the cause of Islam. We give thanks to you while we wait for our questions from our participants. I want to call on our backup Imam Uthman and Imam Shaun, to give us summary from this beautiful presentation. Bismillah, Prof. Imam Uthman, please unmute yourself. Imam Uthman and Imam Shaun. Is Imam with us, Imam Uthman and Imam Shaun? Okay, while we wait for Imam Uthman to give us summary of the lecture for today. Again, the topic is Islam as amelioration for human conditions, and Prof dwell so much to let us understand Islam is a gift to mankind, and it has come to help us take off the shackles of immorality and darkness that was practiced before the time of during the time of past prophets. And he also mentioned the 5 pillars of Islam, and talked a lot in details about each pillars of Islam and how each pillar Allah has set it up for us as a guide to mankind. And it touches in all aspects of life, be it economics, be it academics, be it politics, be it the marital life. It touches all aspects of human lives, and he has equally gone to talk to us about the gift and the benefits of Ramadan, and around this time how we should take advantage of the blessings in Ramadan. He also mentioned that in Ramadan, Allah has so blessed us with it in such that during Ramadan, the month of Ramadan, Allah opens the gate of paradise and locks up Shaitan and his messengers, in order for us to build our spirituality as Muslims. He also further talked about Islam's stance on slavery and the marital life and the rights of women also. He went further to discuss the equal rights when it comes to business arrangements, that Islam has taught us to have every business agreement on paper and to the clearer understanding of whoever we are partnering with in business. And that goes to tell us the beauty of Islam, that Islam is a complete way of life for everyone. And for us to continue to acquire more knowledge, to learn more about our deen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to increase the knowledge of our Prof and continue to increase the knowledge of all of us who had listened to him speak and hear him speak. May Allah make this knowledge beneficial for us, and not just make us people who yearn for rewards of Allah only in Ramadan, to also yearn for the rewards of Allah outside of Ramadan, and continue to carry on the tenets of Islam. We say Jazakallah khairan once more. Our Imam, Uthman Anima Shaun, if you are here with us, if you could please unmute yourself. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Please send in your questions. You can raise your hands if you have any question. I can unmute you to ask your question. While we are waiting for questions to come in, and also wait for Imam Uthman to join us for a summary, I want to briefly recognize the program host, USA Zone. It hosted today's presentation and Dawah series. We thank all of the NASFAT's branches who joined us in today's section and who hosted today's section. I also want to acknowledge my branch, Washington, D.C., Maryland, who is also among the hosts for today's section. We say Jazakallah khairan, may Allah continue to uplift your iman and continue to assist us here with the deen of Islam. We have one hand up from the person of our Princess MKO. I'm going to allow you answer your questions. Please, if you can go ahead and speak, Princess. Alaja, go ahead, ma. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, Princess MKO. Can you hear us? I see your speaker is on, but we can't hear you. Or if you want to help us, type your question in the chat box, please. While we are waiting for Alaja MKO to come up with our question, one of the questions we have here is, what is the way to inspire religious leaders to promote basic Islamic knowledge solely on Quran and the Hadith? So yes, sir, Prof.
Well, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. You will agree with me that religious leaders have a multi-dimensional roles to play in the society. They are those in whose hand we have to get the best of interpretations of our religion. So the first thing that we need is to get them properly trained, to get them properly equipped. Capacity building for our religious leaders is very essential. This is because they are the one that will be dispensing this message to the generality of Muslims. They too need to be properly oriented. Proper orientation is very important for them because it is from what they have learned that they will be sharing with other members, their followers. Secondly, it is that we need to call attention to the fact that it is not just what you say, but your reaction, your action must be properly in line with whatever you say. So our leaders, our religious leaders have a duty of ensuring that they themselves are properly checked before they start checking others. In other words, Allah himself has said it, that it is not enough to say I'm facing the west or I'm facing the south. What is important is that to fear Allah and to ensure that you carry along with you all that Allah has asked you to uphold, and you drop what Allah has asked you to drop. In other words, Amru bil Ma'ruf wa Nahyu anil Munkar should be the watchword of our leaders. What is Amru bil Ma'ruf? Enjoining what is right. Wa Nahyi anil Munkar, forbidding what is wrong. So they should be the one that would propel us to do better. And they themselves must be seen to be just. So therefore, their demonstration of life, their attitude, as well as interaction with even the Muslims and even the non-Muslims, will go a long way to project the kind of image that Islam expects of them. So our leaders have a duty, 1, to be properly enlightened, 2, to be properly oriented, 3, they themselves must be well equipped. In other words, capacity building for them. Thank you.
Jazakallah khairan, sir, for that response. May Allah open the door of knowledge for you and for other spiritual leaders out there to be able to guide us on. I'm going to unmute MKO to say a question.
Okay.
Bismillah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I actually heard you before. I don't know why you cannot hear me. Anyway, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Yes,
thank
you can.
so much. Okay, thank you, my sister. Okay, thank you to our professor. Thank you so much for this great lecture. My question is, can we give somebody that loaned money to repay the money with zakat money? Can we do that? Because somebody needs an assistance. So I want to make sure we're doing the right thing. If we can give that person the zakat money to pay the loan off. The loan has interest on it. So if we can do that, thank you.
Zakat money under the 8 categories mentioned in Quran chapter 9 verse 60 is for somebody who is owing genuinely, who is engaged in and because of that, he or she require a helping hand. Zakat money cannot be used to offset a loan or a debt that has riba associated with it. This is because the business already is haram. And we cannot use zakat to ameliorate haram. So for such a Muslims, unfortunately, we cannot use the zakat money to offset the loan or the business that is actually having a tainted haram with it. However, if it is a purely business, a halal business, a genuine business, and somebody, genuinely had issues or was owing debts and want to defray the expenses, the debts, and the business is halal, then we can use part of zakat money for them because it's part of the category that Islam has allowed us to take care of. Wallahu a'lam.
One more thing, sir. So
Yeah.
that means, because I already got money for that person, part of the money. So does that mean I have actually I paid